Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good, good. And you?
Good. Uh, WG.
I wasn't sure if anyone would show up.
Is Benji coming today?
I didn't put his name on the agenda, so maybe not. Let me ping him.
Yeah, we can talk briefly about your stuff. Let me get myself on the agenda. One second.
Yay.
Benji just got on there.
Yes. Pull request.
Hey, thanks.
Hello, hello. Good time of day.
We can get started. I think it's just going to be us. Everybody here has agreed to the agreement. Um, Quickly going around the room, introducing ourselves for the recording. I'm Alex Riley. I am here with DoorDash.
Martin from Apollo.
Hi, thanks. Benji from Grapho.
Martin, do you want to go over what's on the agenda today?
So what did we have? So I put a bunch of GitHub links that I would like us to go over. And since the main working group is next week, I think Thursday next week, uh, I would like us to use this time to see how we approach things and make sure we present a simple message to the working group. I think a simple message has more chances of landing somewhere.
Mhm. Definitely. Are we talking about um, the no null bubbling proposal, or are we talking about uh, what are we calling it now? It's not really semantic nullability anymore. What is it?
So my view of it, and tell me if you think otherwise, is we have the semantic nullability problem, which is the larger problem. And one prerequisite of this is disabling null bubbling. And
Hmm.
to do that, we have the on-error proposal, the on-error request property proposal from Benji here, pull request number 1163. That still has a few open questions to make a bit of spoilers. This in turn ended up having a prerequisite on feature delivery, which is why I would like to discuss today and see if we can find a way to remove this rabbit hole of prerequisites so we can find something that has more chances of landing soon. Let's put it like this. You're muted, Alex.
That sounds good. Where do you want to start?
Let's review those GitHub links. Maybe I can share my screen actually. Let's get that started. Right. So it's a few links that I would like to either close or ask what people think about it. What do we have? So Benji, this one's yours. It's on error proposal, but with a custom scalar for error behavior. Do we want to keep that open?
Maybe.
Thing is, and I know I'm a bit pushy here, but the conversation is very long now. We have a lot of material. I have a hard time myself seeing what we are trying to push right now. So what I would like us to do is go to the working group next week with a very simple question, like this is what we want to do, and see if they have any objection. And in that regard, I feel like having all those issues is and pull request is good because they are possible alternatives, but it doesn't feel like this is the main thing we are working on. So I'd rather like close them and focus on what we are actually working on than keep everything open for an hypothetical future.
I understand what you're saying, but GraphQL.js has 76 open pull requests. I don't think people are going to GraphQL.js to figure out what the latest thing is on nullability. I think we're presenting what the latest thing is. And we control it with that conversation. And this pull request might be reworked based on feedback. I'm currently using GraphQL.js versions published from these branches as well.
Oh,
And
okay.
they are also marked as draft. So I'm not sure that it brings much value to close it.
All right, so let's take the problem from the other side and go directly to point 7 here. How do we move on error? What do we want to focus on next week? Like, what do we want to present?
So we presented this already at the working group, and the main feedback that we got was well, mostly people were like, yeah, this sounds good. But Lee was unconvinced that this is a schema feature. He feels it's a service feature. And as such, he wasn't super happy putting details about it on the schema itself. As a result of that, we had a discussion and basically landed on the idea of like a capabilities or features system, which we then iterated further into what is now the capabilities system that is proposed. So essentially, this is hopefully the final part of a long discussion thread over many working groups trying to get the error behavior feature over the finish line.
Okay, but this also comes with service capabilities, right? Like this is bundled.
That's right. Yes, they are the same related feature that have been discussed at the working group.
Do you think this is something that can land? And I'm a bit worried about service discovery and feature discovery. This is something that has been discussed for years now. Do we feel like this is something we're ready to ship? Awkward silence. I guess not then. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Apparently, I muted my mic. So yeah, sorry. Lee was saying that one of the things that basically Lee's suggestion around this was that it's a key value store, essentially, because this isn't just specifically related to error behavior. It's also this feature discovery is is an important piece of this. And I would say we also really need something like this for fragment arguments. We also need something like this for, what's the other thing? I can't remember right now. But essentially, we need things where to indicate things that the schema itself doesn't indicate. So the schema doesn't tell you what its error behavior is. That's not part of the schema. The schema is just a type system. The error behavior is a runtime or a service feature, and this is effectively what Lee's been saying. So what we need is a way to indicate things that aren't indicated by the type system. And this needs it. Fragment arguments needs it. We want a simple solution to it. Lee's suggested a key value store. Lee's not keen on adding just lots of individual, like a new field for each new feature. And yeah, we could. What I originally proposed for this, of course, was just a field on the schema and then a directive to go along with it, right? The thing that held us up there was that I tried to type it with an enum, and that's basically not supported. So that's fine. We could have typed it with a scalar or with a string, but essentially, irrelevant of that, the direction was taken elsewhere based on Lee's feedback.
Yes. So what we're saying now is we need that before we get disable error propagation.
Whatever we ship with disable error propagation needs to come with a way of indicating whether or not that error propagation is disabled. So we don't need it before, we need it with.
Yes.
They are hand in hand.
But again, a separate problem, right? Like feature flags, or how do we call them? Service capabilities. So service capabilities can exist without error propagation, and it should.
Yeah, I think we could, if we wanted to, ship service capabilities without error propagation. I don't think we could do it the other way around.
Yep.
Not without adding yet another schema field. And even then, the pushback has been it's not a schema feature.
Yep.
It's a service feature. So I don't think Lee is keen to add a schema field for that, based on what he said so far.
And that's the other question I had is, it's not a schema field, but at the end of the day, in introspection, we might put it in the __ schema type. If I go down here, because here what you're suggesting is a new meta field, which the clients cannot discover. There is no introspection for meta fields. So how would a client know whether it's talking to a server that has service capabilities or not? It has to be out of burn, right?
There's no introspection for meta fields.
So the easiest way to detect it
Hmm.
is to use _type name : _service to find out whether it supports the service type.
Okay, so if it has the service type, then we assume it's going to have the service meta field.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, that's fair. I guess I'm slightly, yeah, I guess if this is what we have to do, then we have to do this. But that probably means we have another 6 months before we can ship something. This is my current view of things. Because all these people who discussed on capabilities, this is a very large problem that's going to impact a lot of people in the community and whose input we need to collect. So that's going to take some time. Just setting up the expectation there.
Yeah, it's pretty broad.
Maybe it's worth considering, like, how would we do this without, without capabilities? Is would it be realistically feasible to roll this out without introspection changes?
Theoretically, yes. So essentially, you can use out-of-band communication, right, to say what your schema supports, and whether it supports these features. So we technically don't need to launch them together, but to do that, we would have to be accepting of the fact that there's this out-of-band communication. It also
Yeah.
means that like tools can't automatically infer which mode they're meant to be in. It doesn't tie the capability to something in the schema that indicates that there is that capability. It's not ideal. And yeah, I hear what you're saying, that the capability system would need some discussion, but honestly, this is something that we've talked about on and off over the years, and no one's really like properly written up a proposal for it. But
Yep.
no one's also indicated that it needs anything particularly powerful. Like often the suggestions have been like, we can add to an HTTP header, like whether you've got this feature or that feature. And essentially, if you can indicate something like that in a header, then you can do it in a key value store where the values are strings. I don't think it's that complex. A string dictionary essentially is very powerful. Like you can use it to do a huge amount of stuff. So I wonder if you can come up with examples of things that you think that the capability type should be held up by. Like what features do you think it wouldn't be capable of expressing?
I think I don't see. I think it's perfectly fine. My concern is more like we don't need to ask me. We need to ask 50 people in the community, and asking 50 people in the community is going to take months.
Is there something that prevents us from rolling out capabilities afterward, or do these need to be rolled out together?
Yeah.
They don't strictly need to be rolled out together, but I think we would be losing a lot of the value from them if we don't, because it will mean that there's not like a guaranteed route of auto discovery for clients to know whether they can use it or not. It needs to be configured externally, that kind of stuff.
But a good chunk of our clients, a good chunk of users of GraphQL own both the front end and back end, correct?
Yes.
So it's not like a mystery for a lot of clients whether the surface they're hitting is it's like it's known. They're not hitting arbitrary clients, they're hitting one, or they're not hitting an arbitrary service, they're hitting one known service.
Yeah, that's generally the case, but it's not the case for things like graphical Altair and so on. And maybe things like React admin has like a GraphQL capabilities and stuff. There's things like that that basically it just means more configuration, right?
What
Normally
was the second
GraphQL
one you said? It
just
was a
works.
graphical Altair?
Oh, Altair is just another schema IDE.
Okay. So the users of the capabilities thing would be people hitting tools that hit arbitrary services, and if there's a I don't know, some front end that's hitting uh maybe a third party service where they're unsure. Anything else?
I think one of the main issues is essentially synchronization, right? It's not just that you have to configure your, well, okay, so there's two problems that we're talking about here. One
Hmm.
is whether or not the schema, the service supports you setting the on-error behavior.
Hmm.
And that's fairly easy to discover because you just send it a query and see what it does, potentially. Um, yeah, there's going to be issues. Well, no, even that, like you can't just do it with dunder type name, for example. Um, yeah, you can't discover it, I don't think, actually. Anyway, so there's that, whether or not it supports that. The other part is what the default error behavior of the schema is. If you're going to change the default error, well, you should not change the default error of a schema. You should only ever do that for a new schema. Like changing it would be a breaking change.
Correct.
Um, and you know, that's the next thing is we've been talking about this potentially being like the default going forward. And if we want it to be the default, we need a way to indicate that it is the default, that it is what that schema is set to if you don't specify your own thing. And we essentially want all of the tooling like code generators, IDEs, VS Code integration, whatever. We want all of this stuff to know what mode it's going to be running in.
Could we have a first step where the user has to choose, like they go to graphical, they have a drop down saying, this is error mode I want to use.
Yeah, and this isn't like the only thing like that either. For example, if you are doing GraphQL subscriptions over WebSockets, there's normally some out-of-band communication to indicate that. So this isn't like the only situation where we would use out-of-band communication, but for such a what we hope will be significant change, it would be great if Relay can just pick up on it and start using it without having to be configured to do so, for example.
Are you maybe I'm not following. Are you saying a client that is not configured to understand null bubbling behavior would be capable of using this? Like existing Relay clients?
Existing ones wouldn't be able to use it, but essentially a new version of Relay that supports this feature would then be able
Yeah.
to just turn it on as soon as your server supports it without you having to like reconfigure, redeploy, etc.
But you would have to uh like all your code would be written under the assumption that null bubbling happens, correct?
Right. And that's why your client is responsible for doing this generally. So the client, like Relay, for example, would ensure that the interface that it exposes to the client code was the same, essentially the same, whether this setting was turned on or off. It just allows it to do safer normalized caching, things like that, but also potentially to render more data in a partial success situation. But it shouldn't like break the types of the client, for example.
Okay,
And this is what we're talking about when we say like error handling clients.
got it. So in this world, enabling this capability would be a non-breaking change of the relay client. So it would not require human intervention, or at least minimal human intervention, in order for the relay client to start taking advantage of the capability. So it could use more of the data, more partial data in its normalized store. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. The other concern is essentially like if we want people to use this, then ideally the client should be able to do it for them without them even needing to even necessarily know that this feature even exists. Like this is something that can be handled by an error handling client for them, whether that be Apollo client, Relay, Urkel, whatever. And for that to work, we need a way of indicating it. We found in the past that it's not 100% safe to just pass an additional request parameter with a request, because
Yeah.
certain servers, despite what the spec says, certain servers will see additional properties and reject that as an invalid request. So if they saw on error on the
Well,
request,
uh-huh.
they would then reject the entire request.
Well, okay, so that's interesting. So, are those do those are we saying, would you say those clients don't conform to the spec then?
Servers I'm talking about,
Or
but
those servers, yeah.
well, no, I wouldn't say that. And the reason is the spec is not an HTTP spec. It's just a GraphQL execution spec essentially. So a GraphQL request as defined in the spec is not the same as one sent over HTTP. Because, for example, it includes things like the schema, which you don't send over HTTP, of course. So from the 10 years that we've existed without an official landed HTTP spec, people have implemented servers, and when they've seen, oh, these are the fields that I want to accept, they've just said, for example, if they're doing it in a strongly typed language, they may well have just defined, here is the shape of it. It may have operation name, it will have query, it may have variable values. And then when something comes through that doesn't conform to that, it just throws like a validation error essentially, or
Got
a
it.
marshalling error.
And so initially we thought adding that uh uh a request parameter query, what are you calling it? A request parameter?
Yeah.
Initially we thought adding that request parameter would not be a breaking change because it is undefined by the
Yeah.
spec.
So the idea, I don't think originally the spec was actually strict on this, right? It didn't actually think ahead enough, and it didn't say you should ignore additional keys or anything like that. That's something that we've added more recently. And in fact, early clients for things like trusted documents, like Relay added the ID or document ID field to the request.
Hmm.
We've since introduced like extensions. So anything that you do that extends the request should go into extensions, because we essentially reserve that top level namespace.
Got it.
But we also,
Servers that reject that are out of conformance for the current version of the spec, but they were not out of conformance for older versions of the spec.
not necessarily either, because a server can reject a request for any reason that it wants to. Like it can
Or
reject a perfectly valid request.
um yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Here's what I'm gonna suggest, and we can do what we want. Um, it seems like Benji, you think that the um what you're proposing is not going to be contentious. It's going to there's this is something people want. There's not a whole lot to talk about here. Hopefully it'll float on through. Um, if that's the case, if we bring it to the working group and that's the case that no one has any issues with it, then it's great. We can move forward with it. But if it seems like it's going to be a larger discussion, then we can kind of revisit maybe shipping these separately.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And yeah, I don't think it's necessarily going to like just sell through on the first attempt, essentially. But it is something that we've already discussed at the main working group now, and it is following effectively the path laid out there. So this isn't completely new. Like that, we're not introducing this for the first time at this working group. We're essentially just introducing the latest version of it.
I'm kind of skeptical that it'll be easy, but I'm open to the possibility. I don't know. There's been a lot of times in this process where I brought stuff to the working group, and I'm like, I think we'll all coalesce on this. I think this is fine. We've been talking about this for a while, and then everybody at the working group is like, hey, what about a secret third thing that we could do? And yeah, I don't know, man. Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can do that. Um, we still got some time, right? Yeah, we got time.
Yeah.
Are there any is there anything else you want to discuss about that proposal, Benji?
I mean, concretely, it would be great to understand what the pushback is likely to be. So if there are situations where you've wanted feature discovery for a while and this does not cover those needs, like now would be a great time to shout about it.
What were the other use cases that people brought up for it?
I'm
When this has
struggling
been
to remember,
floated in
but
the
let
past?
me list a few that like come to mind. So whether or not you support WebSockets and when you support WebSockets, what do you support over them? Is it query mutation and subscription or just subscription? And if you support
And
WebSockets for subscriptions, what endpoint do you go to for it? Is it a different endpoint? That kind of stuff. There's also people who just
what
want to indicate.
And which transports exactly, like, two different WebSocket protocols.
is it GraphQL WS or is it GraphQL? What is the other one? Like
GraphQL Transport
they are
WS.
mixing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There's also things like people just wanting to indicate what environment it is. Like, is this staging? Is this production? That kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And also like indicating like versions of the schema, not necessarily like a, GraphQL spec version or anything, but like this is release and then a commit hash or something. So there's things like that in terms of feature discovery. From the specs point of view, there's things like, fragment arguments or anything that we want to do where the client document can include syntax that wasn't previously supported by GraphQL servers.
Well, would experimental features fall into this category?
Yeah, I think indicating that a server supports a specific version of stream and defer, for example, would be a great use of feature discovery as well.
Do you want to share your screen and we can maybe walk through what it would be like to um what it would look like to do each of those? Benji?
Sorry, I said sure, but I was muted. I'm just loading up a Google Doc. That's probably the easiest place to do it.
Totally.
What are we calling this? Feature discovery.
Is it feature discovery or service capabilities?
Service capabilities is what indicates them. Feature discovery is what you're trying to do, right?
All right.
Anyone with the link is the editor. Copy link. Stick it in the chat. By all means, like I'll put a bunch of new lines in there. By all means, like put some titles in there with various different ideas that you'd like to see discovery of. Suppose you could do something. Yeah. I think one of the values of doing this with a like reverse DNS thing is you can essentially do whatever you want. Like you can put whatever codes and values you want in there. But when we have standard ones, we can put them under a standard namespace once they're agreed. And one of the things that we did in this, for example, was reserve like the org.graphql.rfc namespace. CCN. Yeah, okay, cool.
When you bring this up, are they going to be like it's time for a dictionary type, like a key value pairs?
I mean,
Struct.
what is a dictionary other than a list of key value pairs? And GraphQL already supports lists of keys and values.
Yeah, I
It's
guess
just
during serialization, you would just, yeah, it wouldn't make a difference.
it's not a huge deal, no. So I think we're happy just sticking with what we've got, which is what I've essentially written up. One of the interesting things about this is that the value isn't necessarily required. So I've not put one on the queries or mutations over WebSockets. You can just set the string value to null. And that just is basically, it counts as like a truthy. It's like, yeah, we've got that thing. It doesn't need a value. It's just a thing that we have.
Yeah, it's just a flag.
Is there any more examples that you want to see?
I'm reading through the spec changes right now. Sort of making sure I understand what's happening.
Martin, do you remember what the other thing is that needs syntax? Needs a syntax change, not fragment arguments, but there was another thing.
Operation descriptions, maybe?
Ah, that was it. Yes, well remembered. Well remembered.
Too bad Stephen had to leave. I'm sure he knows this one.
Are people going to ask what else? People might ask what else could be under the service field, and whether we just want to go like, do we just want to have the field be capabilities?
So Lee himself said that like maybe we just want it to be directly a capabilities thing, but I try and keep in mind the versionless nature of GraphQL and the preserve option value guiding principle, and we may want something else on service in future. So I don't think we should limit ourselves to just capabilities. We could do it via just a double underscore capabilities top level field, for example,
Mhm.
and remove it from the concept of service entirely, so that you could add service later. But I think that this feels like the right way to do it to me, and it also leaves us like a comfortable and easy space to expand into later.
Another thing, shouldn't type and schema also be members of service? I'm just playing devil's advocate right now. I'm just saying shit.
What's the difference between the service and the schema is a good question. A service has a schema, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Aren't
Yeah,
schema and type also meta properties of the service?
but they are already top level. So having them accessible through two different paths would feel really weird.
Yeah, I agree. They are properties of the service,
The
but since you already have entry
the
points to them, you don't necessarily need another.
and actually type should probably be a property of schema, but that's probably a separate discussion.
What should be a property of schema, sorry?
Underscore type should probably be type
Oh,
under
yes,
schema.
agreed. In fact, schema itself should accept arguments, and it should accept whether or not you want to see the deprecated or the non-deprecated schema, and then it should return that as a top level feature. And that would then make it very true that the idea of deprecation is that the schema with everything that's deprecated removed should still be a valid schema in itself. But that's a bit much to add now.
Capability
But
identifier is a string value. Sorry, continue.
Just to riff off of what you said there, Alex, and also what I just said, we could make it, for example, so that later we had something like the service has a schema include deprecated. Like this.
And we deprecate underscore schema.
Well, we could, yeah. I don't think we'd necessarily need to, but we definitely could. But this way you'd have a way of querying the schema that was already self-consistent. It would still have all of those nested include deprecated fields, because those are parts of the Dunder schema type, but it would be a way to move to this cleaner way. Because as you pointed out before, there is no introspection of the meta fields. And as such, it's not possible to find out whether, unless we were to do it with some kind of thing like service capabilities, but this is actually a schema feature, not a service feature, whether the Dunder schema field accepted any arguments. So I think if we needed to accept arguments to the schema, we would do it by moving it under service like this.
I'm looking at capability identifiers. You might want to loosen this up. It's unclear whether if a third party, if a user of GraphQL creates a capability identifier that doesn't conform to this pattern, does that mean the service is out of spec? Or is this a suggestion and some prefixes are reserved for official use?
Yeah, it's a suggestion. Lee wasn't. I originally wrote up a whole actual syntax for this using the GraphQL spec language, but Lee pushed back on that and said basically the reverse DNS is the right way to do it, and we should encourage everyone to use it. But also, we don't need that complexity in the spec, and it should just be essentially a recommendation. I've gone a little bit stronger than what Lee said. I think I've required that it has at least one dot in it, and that it's made of segments that, and yes, to answer your question, if you break the rules that are in the spec, you are spec non-compliant. But I think the basic implementations like GraphQL.js would just reject those things outright. They're fairly straightforward to validate with the regex.
I think I would probably loosen this up and just reserve the prefixes, because otherwise this is one more point for people to argue over. Yeah, I would just
Yeah. You're not wrong, and in fact, you're actually arguing from Lee's point of view as well, which
I think
Lee
so.
basically said the same thing. The challenge with that, as with anything like this, is if we allow broad data, then we limit what we can do with this in future. So, for example, consider that you might want in future to indicate this via SDL. You might have something like service and then, I don't know, capabilities, and then indicating these things through there. Let's just copy and paste them in. No, I'm not in Vim. So you might want to do something like this, right? Which would work fine with some basic syntax support from GraphQL. But if you allow arbitrary strings, you would need to string quote all of the keys, which isn't the end of the world. It's just slightly uglier.
I think, let's see. I might also suggest that you cut the points about GraphQL over HTTP, since the spec doesn't concern itself with transport, and it's already covered by the org.graphql.reservation.
Yep.
Uh, mm. Yeah, I don't know. I can just I can just in my mind I'm envisioning people bike shedding over this. I just like it's yeah, I don't know. People love to talk about naming.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh, uh, mm, I think this works well with um the error propagation behavior definitions. This is good. Mm.
I've trimmed that sentence like you mentioned.
Clients should not
So
include on error
go
in
on.
the request. Okay. So this enables the request parameter, is that right?
Yes,
This,
if your
yeah.
service indicates it supports it, then you may now include it.
But Earlier clients, it's just undefined behavior. They may not break if you send it and the capability isn't exposed,
Oh, yes,
right?
servers, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Generally, the server should ignore it, but some may reject the request.
Yeah, propagate. Such a null. The client is responsible for interpreting this null in conjunction with the errors listed. Distinguish. Okay. And then halt, just full fail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I changed it from abort because of problems with that word, as recommended by the inclusivenaming.org or something.
Sort of thing. It's relay uses what? Throw?
Throw on field
No.
error.
No. There was no, throw is something different for relay. Or no. I don't know. I don't know. But this is good. I halt seems fine. There's this. This is all stuff I'm basically familiar with, I think. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, we can give it a go. How's the next working group meeting looking? Is it busy?
I don't know. Did I add things to it already?
Agendas.
We have 19 items.
On the 5th, there is, yeah. Oh man. Okay. A bunch of this is overflow from last time though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah, we
first
should get
6 we
through
can
that.
ignore. They're just standard stuff anyway, so.
But we should get through the overflow. Oh yeah, you already have it here as 17. Nice. Okay. Cool. Vibe check. Very good. No, I'm into it. I think yeah, we'll see how it goes. And we might come up with other possibilities during the meeting. Other people might bring other ideas. So
Yeah. And like, if the main complaints with it are that people think that the identifiers should be opened up, like, sure, I'll just delete those 2 sentences, no problem. Let's get it merged, you know. Sometimes it's almost worth giving people things to complain about.
yeah, no, real. Okay. Cool. Sounds like a plan. Anything else we want to go over? Sweet. Well,
So
thanks for
wait,
yeah.
just do we have? Yeah, we have 5 minutes. Discuss actual semantic nullability stuff because so far we have only discussed disabling error propagation, which is step 1. Do we want to say anything about the rest, or are we keeping it for a future working group? To be honest, I like taking things one after the other. So I'm fine, but I can't remember what the status was last time. There was something about having a mix of semantic non-null, and I forgot what the other one was probably.
There were 3 options proposed. It seemed like the working group broadly rejected having new syntax. They in fact decided that they wanted it to be more difficult and more painful to use this since we are now treating it as a transitionary type. There are 2 competing proposals that use what's the word I'm looking for? The at I want to say
Asterisks.
delegates to click
Yeah,
what?
Directives.
another.
Directives, that's the one.
Okay.
There are 2 competing proposals that use directives. Lee's and Benji's. Lee's is 7, Benji's is 6.
6.
and Benji is strongly against 7, and some people want a combination of 6 and 7. But they're kind of an even split if we do ranked choice voting from that meeting.
There
we
is
explore
also
that a
now,
little? Sorry, go
there's
ahead,
also
Benji.
now number 8, which is essentially one of them, possibly number 6, but done as a appendix to the spec to make it very clear it's transitional.
Okay, so yeah, okay, totally.
Do
Yeah,
we do a recap just to keep things in people's minds?
we can.
So personally, I'm of the opinion that that semantic non-null, the directive, already exists and is already in wide use. And that the people that are using it are happy doing it SDL only, in which case they don't actually need introspection support for it. It would be better if it had introspection support, but this doesn't feel like the hair on fire problem anymore, because you now have the ability to indicate this, and if we can manage to land this ability to turn off error propagation, those two get you like 70 or 80% of the way there. So adding an actual like directive to help people with the transition, I think will be a nice thing to do when people start getting excited about this sort of future and like, oh, this feature sounds great, but I can't move to it. Okay, here's what we're proposing for help there. But yeah, my priority right now is just to get this what we want in 20 years time GraphQL to be. Let's get that over the line, and then we'll worry about how to get people there afterwards, because I think that problem is essentially fairly well understood. It's understood what we need to do there, which is to indicate, which things are semantically versus strictly non-null. It's just not necessarily agreed on what syntax are we going to use to do it. And since it's transitional, it's not super important, I think.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
The implementation is also, I mean, we just need to flip the asterisk implementation, so not too bad. We just need to, come to a conclusion.
I think the implementation is going to be slightly more complex than asterisk was, because it really is a type system feature, but it's masquerading as a directive, which means you need to then pass the directiveness through the algorithms. Because at the moment, the algorithms just know what the type is at that position, and then they decide whether to throw or not based on whether it's non-null. But now they would need to know what the directive was that was applied to that field, and then based on the levels argument, which one of those applied to it. It is the spec edits are significantly more complex if done as a directive than they would be if done as a type. But I think you can actually like hide that internally. You can sort of hand wave yourself over it a little bit. And then when you like implement it in GraphQL.js, I think it would literally be a variant of the non-null. We would just like tag it with an internal property so that when the relevant error handling saw it, it would see it has this thing. It just doesn't reflect like that in introspection kind of thing.
Totally. Cool. So that's on the 5th. I'll see y'all there. I'll try to get some reading done before I show up. But I appreciate y'all coming out. This was productive, I think.
Cool. Good to see
Definitely.
you all.
Sweet. Later.
Ciao.
See you all. Have a good night, good day, good time of day. See you.
Later.